Welcome back. So the guys weren't in the shop yesterday, and obviously today is Independence Day holiday, so no progress has been made for the first 2 days of this week. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to go over the flight controls and also tell you about the parachute system that we've ordered now. But before I get into that, I also wanted to ask you at the end of this video if you could just put a little comment on the video to say whether you would come to the open house if we had it, and just put in there how many people would be coming, just when it's 1 or 2 or whatever, just so we can get some sort of idea of the possible numbers that we get. We're still running a little bit behind in terms of when we're going to have that, because as you know, I wanted to have the aircraft up on the landing gear, and we're waiting on the parachute straps, which I'll tell you about in a little bit. And we'll also need to get some of this flight controls in place as well before we can finish closing out the rest of the fuselage. So anyway, those things are kind of holding us up in terms of when we're going to announce the open house. But anyway, let's get into the flight controls. So Mark has been busy on speccing out all the details of the flight controls here. So here you can see he's just got the bits and pieces that are sort of relevant to the controls. We've got the keel there, the aft pressure bulkhead, back wall of the straight tank, the main spar there, and there's an aileron over there. So all these different bits and pieces sort of make up what's sort of relevant to the flight controls. And initially I designed the flight controls with push rods, but we've kind of been forced to switch over to using cables for the first part. But you'll see it's actually going to work out really good for us here. It makes it simpler, and we still get a good system out of it. So this is all the stuff that Mark's been speccing out here, and of course I did the conceptual design a long time ago, but just to go through it. So here we have the stick, and then the main sort of rod coming from that, and then that sort of actuates through a bushing there, and then it's the hard point that mounts to the side inside of the aircraft there. And then we have this kind of slider mechanism that allows the stick to sort of push in and out, and there's a bushing there. That's a replaceable bushing, so if it gets any wear or slop in it, it's very easy to replace it. And then we have these actuator arms here that hook up to the main rods for the aileron, and then this end over here, this pushes in and out. That's going to connect to the elevators. We haven't got to that yet, so mainly what I'll be showing you right now is all to do with the aileron control. So each of these rods connects up to the center rod, and that's where it basically transitions through the keel, through the pressure wall. Because obviously, you know, we're going from inside the cabin to outside the cabin, because these cables and stuff are all outside the cabin pressure cell. So when you actuate that rod left and right, it turns this wheel, clockwise and anti-clockwise, and that in turn moves the cables. So we have to create these brackets that I'm highlighting here, and then on those we put pulleys, and then we have cable guards on those, and those are basically to help the cable stay in place when you're first feeding the cables through the system. And then here we have just basically a housing for this rotational rod there, and then there's bearings on either end, and that the bearings are where the pressure wall is. So it allows us to basically transition the pressure wall and not have to worry about any sort of leaks in that, because the bearings are airtight. And then we have this little clasp here, which a little clamp on the cable that stops the cable from sliding there. So when you actuate the wheel, it actually moves the cable and it just doesn't slip. And then those cables will transition down the center section of the keel, down to the back of the cabin, and down there we have another set of pulleys. And these are these brackets. We have to create these hopefully this week, and those are just going to be out of carbon fiber, and then we'll just bond them to the floor and bolt the pulleys and stuff into place. I'll just make it easier for us so we don't have to try and work in underneath the keel once it's sort of put in place. And then on each of the cables we have adjusters there, so you can tension them, and then the cable goes up over that wheel, it goes across to another wheel there, and then it makes the turn down the main spar and runs around another wheel on the end of the main spar, and then comes back and then across again. So it's basically one continuous loop going from the front section out to the upboard side of each side of the main spar, and then back again. Now the advantage of using cables over using push rods is that there's far less hardware. We don't have to create these custom bell cranks, and we don't have to have so much hardware with the push rods and all the rod ends and all that sort of stuff. And the cables can sort of fit through the existing geometry, like where where the gear mounting brackets and stuff are without sort of having to sort of, you know, fit through narrower gaps, so the cables don't take up as much space. And ultimately, you know, once we get out to the outboard end of the spars here, you see there's another wheel there, and again that's locked on the cable, and then there's a sort of actuating arm there, and then that will connect up to a push rod that will go out to the aileron. So it's basically cables to the edges of the main spar, and then from there on out it's just a couple of push rods there. So it'll be basically one push rod going to a bell crank, and then that around the other side of that bell crank going to the aileron. I'll show you that here in a minute. Anyway, so you know, it's a bit of a downside not being able to use the push rods, but upside being it's going to be easier to do this system, and I think it's going to work just as well. And when the cables are tensioned correctly, you won't even notice that you're running a cable system at all. Okay, to show you again sort of how this is going to hook up to the aileron, I'll just show again the rest of that geometry that I hid before. So here you can see there's that wheel sort of mounted to the inside of the main spar there. And then over here you've got the bell crank for the aileron, and then there's a rod going from that to the aileron itself, and then the rod will be, the aileron there will be hinged, kind of see where that sketch is there on the top point there. So what's not visible right now is the rod that connects the bell crank to this wheel here, but basically from this point there that's highlighted to the bell crank there's going to be a rod there, so when the wheel turns there it actuates the aileron. And with respect to the rudder controls, we're probably just going to go with the cables sort of similar to the cables that they have for steering mechanisms for like power boats, sort of enclosed cable, because they're just like a one-way push on the rudders anyway, so we don't need to have all these different pulleys and things like that. Anyway, we'll get into more detail on the rudder controls later on, but I did want to show you kind of how the ailerons and stuff work. So we're going to be working on this week on creating these brackets for the floor so we can get those bonded into place, and then we can continue with closing out the rest of the stuff for the fuselage. So onto the parachute system, we've actually selected Galaxy GRS, which is a Czech Republic company that supplies parachutes to various different aircraft makers, including Pipistrel. Anyway, we've selected them because they have what we considered a decent product at a fair price. And so they're in the process right now of making our parachute and the custom straps that we need, because we need 5 straps, 3 for the bridle and then 2 more that are installed inside the A-pillars. Anyway, I'll show you a little bit more on that in a minute. But anyway, if you'd like to go to their website, you can look at more information there about it. But this is the chute that we're using here, so it comes in a soft pack there, and it has the rocket, which actually will be mounting sort of a little bit separate to that, and then it has a cable that goes with it, and then an actuator and a few other different little bits and pieces. And the pricing on this thing will probably come in around about 10,000 US, which I think is reasonable compared to BRS. I think was going to cost us around about 15,000. So we're waiting on those straps and the chute. The straps will come first from them, but it's probably going to be another week or 2 before we receive those. And then until we receive those, we can't bond the door frames into place because they have to be embedded in the door frame. And I'll show you a little bit more on that in a minute. Anyway, here's the actual chute itself. So you can see it comes with an actuator there that mounts on the roof, and then a cable for that hooks up to the rocket motor. And then the chute is inside this soft pack, and that'll all be installed sort of in the one side of the baggage compartment, sort of standing upright in the aircraft. And there's another shot there. So anyway, that's exciting for us to have that. And we should have the chute within about 4 weeks and the straps within about 2. And here's just an idea of showing kind of how the straps will be installed, the ones in the A-pillar. So they'll basically just be embedded inside this A-pillar there in the run where that green line is there. And at the top of the strap there will be poking out sort of into the channel that's on the outside of the aircraft, and there'll be a loop in it. And then we'll basically loop through one of the bridle straps through that loop. And that way we'll have a nice firm or solid mounting point, because the strap will run down the A-pillar, and as you can see there again on the green, down into the forward bulkhead and be anchored there. So any sort of load that's pulled on that will drive all the way into the fuselage through the forward bulkhead. Anyway, so once we have those straps, we'll be able to bond those door frames into place, and then of course get the rest of the fuselage all bonded together and start doing things like instrumentation. And of course, once the fuselage is all bonded together, we can get it up on the gear, and then that leaves us set up for having the open house. So back to that again. Can you just leave a comment on the video only if you think that you would make it to the open house? And again, the date hasn't been announced yet. We'll give you a 4-week notice, but it'll be basically 4 weeks from when you see the fuselage sitting up on the landing gear. That way we know we're not going to sort of be rushed and then not get things done in time. But in your comment, can you just basically put a number, 1, 2, 3, so how many people you think would be coming with you, including yourselves, just so we have an idea on the numbers for the open house. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention, we went over 1,000 deposits yesterday, so we have 1,003 as of right now. So that's pretty exciting. Anyway, that's our update for the first half of this week, and there'll be another update again on Saturday. So thanks again for watching.